A whisper of truth. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, the air thick with tension. All eyes were on 9-year-old Lily Harper as she climbed onto the witness stand. Her small frame was dwarfed by the chair, and she clutched a worn teddy bear tightly in her arms. It was her lifeline, her silent confidant in a world that had turned upside down. "Lily, can you tell us what happened the night of the incident?" The defense lawyer's voice was calm but probing, each word measured. Lily glanced at her mother sitting in the gallery, her eyes red and swollen from days of silent tears. Her father, Sam Harper, sat at the defense table, his face pale and gaunt. He offered her a faint, hopeful smile, a flicker of strength in an otherwise crumbling facade. Lily swallowed hard, gripping her bear tighter. "Daddy didn't do it," she said softly, her voice barely audible. The murmurs in the courtroom ceased instantly. The prosecutor rose, his face a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Objection, Your Honor. She's just a child. This testimony is unreliable." The judge leaned forward, tapping his gavel lightly. "Overruled. Let the child speak." Encouraged, Lily continued, her voice gaining strength. "But I know who did." Gasps rippled through the room like a stone thrown into a still pond. The judge motioned for calm, but the tension was palpable. Even Sam's stoic demeanor cracked, his brows furrowing as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Who, Lily?" the lawyer asked gently. "Can you tell us who?" Lily hesitated, stroking the ear of her teddy bear as if drawing courage from it. She looked directly at the prosecutor, then the judge, and finally at her father. "It was Mr. Groves. I saw him." The courtroom erupted into chaos. People whispered and pointed. Some gasped in disbelief. The judge slammed his gavel, calling for order. Lily's mother, Catherine, buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Sam Harper's eyes widened in shock. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently, "What is she talking about?" But Lily wasn't done. "He was in our backyard that night. I saw him through my window." The Harper family before the storm. The Harper family had always been the picture of suburban bliss. Their modest home on Maplewood Lane was filled with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked cookies. Sam, a history teacher, was known for his patience and humor, while Catherine balanced her role as a nurse and mother with grace. Their daughter Lily, bright and imaginative, spent her days painting colorful worlds and playing make-believe in their backyard. It was an ordinary summer evening when their world unraveled. The hum of cicadas filled the air as the family sat on their porch, enjoying lemonade and the setting sun. Sam had kissed Lily goodnight, tucking her into bed with her favorite storybook. "Sleep tight, pumpkin," he had said, smoothing her hair. But by dawn, flashing red and blue lights bathed their quiet street, and Sam was in handcuffs. "Daddy." Lily had cried, rushing down the stairs in her pajamas. Catherine caught her before she could reach the door, her voice trembling. "Go back upstairs, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." But it wasn't okay. Sam was accused of a crime so heinous it shattered their community. Their neighbor, Mr. Groves, a gruff but seemingly harmless retiree, had been attacked in his home and left unconscious. Witnesses claimed to have seen Sam leaving the scene. His fingerprints were found on a garden tool believed to be the weapon, and his watch, a cherished heirloom, was discovered near the victim. Sam protested his innocence, but the evidence was damning. Friends and neighbors turned cold, avoiding the Harpers like they carried a plague. Catherine struggled to shield Lily from the whispers and glares, but it was impossible to escape the judgment of a community convinced of Sam's guilt. Lily's discovery. Lily had always been observant, a trait that made her stories vivid and her questions endless. But no one expected her keen eye for detail to become pivotal. One evening, as Catherine prepared dinner, Lily overheard two officers talking outside. Their voices were low, but curiosity drew her closer to the window. "I don't know," one said. "This case doesn't add up. What about the other break-ins?" The other officer shrugged. "DA's already built a case against Harper. Why complicate things?" Lily's heart raced. She didn't know what break-ins meant, but she knew her daddy didn't hurt anyone. She tucked the information away, unsure of what to do with it. The next day, while playing in the backyard, Lily noticed something odd near the fence. A shiny object caught the sunlight. She picked it up. A button, larger and fancier than anything her dad owned. She tucked it into her pocket, feeling a strange sense of urgency. Lily's secret plan. Over the next few days, Lily became a quiet detective. She eavesdropped on conversations, scribbled notes in her diary, and retraced the path she remembered from the night of the incident. It was during one of her late-night musings that she connected the button to Mr. Groves. She had seen him wearing a coat with similar buttons just days before. Her findings didn't make sense to her, but she was determined to protect her dad. Sometimes she whispered to her teddy bear, "You have to be brave, even if no one listens." A father's shadow and a daughter's resolve. The days following Lily's testimony in court were a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and fear. The courtroom drama had painted her family in an even harsher light to their neighbors. Whispers and judgmental stares followed Catherine Harper everywhere she went. At the grocery store, at school drop-offs, even on their quiet cul-de-sac. It was as though their lives were no longer their own, but a tragic soap opera for everyone to dissect. For Lily, the backlash was a storm she hadn't expected. Her classmates avoided her like she carried a disease. Teachers treated her with a distant sympathy that only made her feel more isolated. Even her best friend, Mia, stopped inviting her over for playdates. "Mom," Lily asked one evening as Catherine washed dishes, "why does everyone hate us now?" Catherine paused, the sponge in her hand dripping water into the sink. She turned to her daughter, her face tired but gentle. "They don't hate us, sweetheart. People are just scared of things they don't understand." Lily didn't respond. Deep down, she didn't believe that. Fear wasn't what made kids at school snicker behind her back, or their parents whisper as she walked by. It was something darker, judgment, maybe even disgust. They thought her dad was a monster, and by extension, they saw her family as tainted. But Lily knew the truth. Her dad wasn't capable of what they were accusing him of. He was kind, patient, and always taught her to do the right thing, no matter how hard it was. She decided that if no one else was going to prove his innocence, she would. Uncovering the clues. The night after her courtroom testimony, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed clutching her teddy bear, the day's events swirling in her head. Her words in court had shifted the narrative, but the weight of what she'd revealed felt like too much for her small shoulders to bear. If Mr. Groves was involved, why hadn't anyone else seen it? Why was her dad still the one on trial? She flipped through her diary, where she'd begun jotting down everything she remembered about the night of the incident. Her childlike handwriting filled the pages with details. The faint glow of a flashlight moving through the backyard, the shadowy figure she glimpsed through her window, and the shiny button she'd found near the fence. The button. Lily scrambled to her closet and retrieved the small tin where she kept her treasures. There it was, nestled among pebbles and bottle caps, a gold button with a crest etched into it. She turned it over in her hands, her heart racing. She hadn't told anyone about it yet. What if this was the missing piece? Lily ran to the kitchen, where her mom was sitting at the table, staring blankly at an unopened stack of bills. "Mom, I need to show you something," she said, her voice trembling. Catherine looked up, startled. "What is it, honey?" Lily placed the button on the table. "I found this in our backyard, the day after Dad was arrested. I think it's important." Catherine frowned, picking up the button and examining it. "Where exactly did you find this?" "Near the fence," Lily said, pointing out the window. "By the bushes." Catherine's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" "I didn't think it mattered," Lily admitted. "But then I remembered Mr. Groves had a coat with buttons like this. I think it's his." Catherine stared at the button, her mind racing. "Lily, this could be important, but we need to be careful. We can't just accuse someone without proof. But this is proof, Lily insisted. And I know he was in our yard that night. I saw him. Catherine sighed, placing the button back in the tin. Let me think about what to do with this. Okay. For now, don't tell anyone else. Lily nodded reluctantly, but she wasn't convinced. Waiting hadn't helped her dad so far. If she wanted to save him, she needed to take action. A midnight encounter. That night, Lily lay awake in bed, her mind restless. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the trees outside, made her heart race. What if Mr. Groves knew she'd spoken out? What if he tried to silence her? She got out of bed and tiptoed to her window, peering out at the moonlit backyard. Everything looked still. But as she turned to go back to bed, something caught her eye. A shadow moving near the fence. Lily's heart pounded as she pressed her face to the glass. The shadow moved again, this time closer to the house. She could make out the faint outline of a man, hunched over and moving cautiously. It was him. It had to be. Grabbing her flashlight and her teddy bear, Lily crept down the stairs. She knew she should wake her mom, but something inside her urged her to act. She reached the back door and peered through the window. The figure was still there, now near the bushes where she'd found the button. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the door and stepped outside. The cool night air wrapped around her, and the grass felt damp under her bare feet. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice wavering. The figure froze, then turned toward her. As he stepped into the moonlight, Lily's suspicions were confirmed. It was Mr. Groves. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, clutching her flashlight like a weapon. Mr. Groves hesitated, his face partially obscured by the brim of his hat. "I was just looking for something," he stammered. "In our yard?" Lily asked, her voice growing steadier. "At midnight." He took a step toward her, and Lily instinctively stepped back. "Listen, kid," he said, his voice low and tense. "You don't know what you're talking about. Go back inside." But Lily didn't move. "I know what I saw," she said firmly. "And I found your button." Mr. Groves' eyes widened for a split second before narrowing. "You need to stay out of this, Lily. You're just a kid. You don't understand how dangerous this is." Before Lily could respond, the back porch light flicked on, and Catherine appeared in the doorway. "Lily, get back inside, now." Mr. Groves turned and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. Catherine rushed to Lily's side, grabbing her by the shoulders. "What were you thinking? You could have been hurt." "I saw him, Mom," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "It was Mr. Groves. He was here." The breaking point. By morning, the police were at their house, taking statements and searching the yard. Lily told them everything she saw, but Mr. Groves was nowhere to be found. The button was taken into evidence, and Detective Avery, the lead investigator, promised to follow up. "Lily," he said gently, crouching to her level, "you've been very brave, but you need to let us handle this now." Lily nodded, but she wasn't ready to let go. She had seen the fear in Mr. Groves' eyes, the way he had panicked when she mentioned the button. He was hiding something, and she was determined to find out what. As the police left, Catherine knelt beside Lily. "Sweetheart, I'm proud of you, but you have to promise me you won't put yourself in danger again." Lily hugged her mom tightly, her resolve hardening. "I promise, Mom," she said softly, though deep down she knew she couldn't stop, not until her dad was free. The whisper beneath the surface. The days after Mr. Groves' midnight appearance at the Harper household brought a flurry of activity. Police patrols circled their quiet neighborhood, reporters lingered near their driveway, and whispers of the latest developments rippled through the small suburban town. But amidst the chaos, 9-year-old Lily Harper couldn't shake the feeling that she was the only one who truly understood how tangled and deep this mystery ran. Her father, Sam, still sat in a cold jail cell awaiting trial. The evidence against him seemed damning, and despite Lily's testimony and the suspicious appearance of Mr. Groves, the case hadn't yet shifted in Sam's favor. Lily knew she had to do more. She wasn't just fighting for her dad's freedom. She was fighting for the family they had lost. A mysterious note. It was a rainy Thursday morning when the next clue landed, quite literally, at their doorstep. Lily and her mom were finishing breakfast when they heard a soft knock at the door. Catherine frowned, glancing toward the window. There wasn't a car in sight, nor any sign of their usual police patrol. "Stay here," Catherine instructed, standing cautiously. Lily sat frozen, her grip tightening on her mug of cocoa. Catherine opened the door slowly, peering into the downpour. No one was there, but on the doormat, a small envelope sat partially soaked by the rain. Catherine picked it up, inspecting it carefully. "No address, no name," she muttered, bringing it inside. "Who's it from?" Lily asked, her curiosity bubbling despite her mother's wary expression. Catherine opened the envelope, revealing a single piece of paper with a short, cryptic message written in uneven handwriting. "If you want the truth, meet me at the old train yard. Come alone. Midnight." The words were chilling in their simplicity. Catherine crumpled the note immediately, her eyes darting to Lily. "This is ridiculous. Probably some prank." Lily wasn't convinced. "What if it's from Mr. Groves?" she asked. "What if he wants to confess?" "Lily, you don't understand how dangerous this is," Catherine said, her voice shaking. "We're not going anywhere near that train yard." But Lily couldn't let it go. If Mr. Groves, or anyone else, was willing to risk this secretive communication, it had to be important. The words replayed in her head all day, a relentless drumbeat of possibility, a risky plan. That night, as the rain continued to pour, Lily lay in bed staring at her ceiling. She could hear her mom pacing in the living room below, her footsteps uneven and restless. The note had rattled Catherine, but Lily couldn't stop thinking about what it might mean. If someone was willing to meet, it was a chance to uncover the truth. By midnight, Lily made up her mind. She crept out of bed, grabbed her flashlight, and slipped on her raincoat. Her teddy bear peeked out of her backpack, a silent companion for the journey. She tiptoed past her mom's room, her heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. The front door was her biggest obstacle. The security chain made a soft click as she slid it free, and she winced at the sound. Pausing to make sure her mom hadn't stirred, Lily finally slipped out into the rain. The train yard wasn't far, just a 10-minute walk through the empty streets. Lily kept to the shadows, her small flashlight barely piercing the heavy downpour. Her shoes splashed through puddles, but she pressed on, determination outweighing her fear. The train yard loomed ahead, a maze of rusted boxcars and abandoned tracks. The place had been shut down years ago, and now it stood as a forgotten relic of the past. Lily ducked behind a stack of crates, scanning the area. It felt like she was being watched, but she saw no one. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling, but loud enough to carry through the rain. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a shadow moved near an old freight car. Lily squinted, her flashlight trembling in her hand. A figure stepped forward, partially illuminated by the beam. It wasn't Mr. Groves. It was someone else entirely. A tall man with a weathered face and piercing eyes, dressed in a long coat that dripped with rainwater. His voice was low and rough when he spoke. "You're braver than I expected, kid," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd show." "Who are you?" Lily asked, clutching her flashlight tighter. "My name doesn't matter," the man said. "What matters is that your dad's innocent, and I can prove it. The hidden ledger." Lily's heart leaped. "You can? How?" The man glanced around nervously, then pulled a small battered notebook from his coat pocket. "This is what they've been hiding. It's a ledger, names, dates, payments. It connects Groves and a few others to something much bigger than your dad's case." Lily frowned, trying to understand. "Bigger how?" "Your dad's being framed, kid," the man said bluntly. "Groves wasn't acting alone. He's part of a group, and they've been covering their tracks for years. Your dad was just unlucky enough to get in their way. Lily's mind raced. Why are you helping me? The man hesitated, his eyes softening. Because I owe your dad. Years ago, he helped me when no one else would. This is my way of paying him back. Before Lily could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps shattered the moment. The man's face hardened. You need to go. Now. But. Go, he barked, shoving the ledger into her hands. Don't trust anyone until you've read that. Terrified, Lily turned and ran, clutching the notebook to her chest. She didn't look back until she was out of the train yard and halfway home. When she finally did, the man was gone, swallowed by the shadows. The weight of the truth. Back in her room, Lily dried off and opened the ledger. The pages were filled with scribbled notes, dates, and names, none of which made immediate sense to her, but one name jumped out. Sam Harper. The entry beside it chilled her. Payment received. Fall guy in place. Lily stared at the words, her breath catching in her throat. Her dad wasn't just innocent. He had been targeted. But why? And who was behind it all? The questions tumbled through her mind as she closed the ledger, her hands shaking. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she had something more valuable. A starting point. A path to the truth. She knew one thing for certain. She couldn't do this alone. When morning came, she would have to tell her mom everything. The stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The lies beneath the surface. The morning after her midnight encounter at the train yard, Lily Harper woke to the sound of rain still pattering against her window. Her heart raced as she remembered the events of the night. The strange man, the ledger, and the cryptic words he'd spoken about her father's innocence. She sat up in bed, the notebook still clutched tightly to her chest, its leather cover damp from her hurried escape through the storm. She glanced at the clock. 7:02 a.m. Her mom would be up soon, and Lily knew she couldn't keep this secret for long. But how would she explain sneaking out at midnight? Would her mom even believe her? Taking a deep breath, Lily opened the ledger again. The pages were crammed with messy handwriting, most of it illegible to her, but certain names and phrases jumped out. Payments, dates, addresses, clues that hinted at a conspiracy far larger than she had imagined. And there, in bold letters, was her dad's name again, tied to a payment labeled Fall Guy, Project Willow. Lily didn't know what Project Willow was, but she knew it was important. A mother's doubt. Downstairs, Catherine was pouring herself a cup of coffee when Lily entered the kitchen, her hair still damp and her small hands clutching the ledger. Catherine glanced up and immediately frowned. "Lily, why are you up so early? And why do you look like you've been outside?" Her voice was a mix of concern and suspicion. "I need to tell you something," Lily said, sitting at the table and placing the ledger in front of her mom. "I found this last night." Catherine froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Last night? What are you talking about?" "I went to the train yard," Lily admitted, her voice trembling. "There was a note on the doorstep. It said someone wanted to meet me there." "You did what?" Catherine's voice rose sharply, her eyes wide with alarm. "Lily, that's... Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "I had to go," Lily insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "Mom, the man I met said Dad's being framed. He gave me this and told me it has proof." Catherine snatched the ledger, flipping through the pages with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You snuck out in the middle of the night to meet a stranger. And you think this notebook, is real?" "It is real," Lily cried. "Look at Dad's name. Look at the things it says about Mr. Groves and the others." Catherine paused, her eyes scanning the page Lily pointed to. She saw the words Fall Guy, Payment Received, and Project Willow. Her face paled as the weight of the words sank in. "Lily," she began, her voice softer now. "Even if this is real, it's dangerous to get involved. This isn't a game." "I know it's not," Lily said firmly, "but this could save Dad." Connecting the dots. Catherine spent the rest of the morning poring over the ledger, while Lily sat nearby, watching nervously. Every so often, Catherine would mutter something under her breath or scribble notes on a scrap of paper. "There's a pattern here," she said finally, tapping one of the pages. "These payments, they're tied to dates when other crimes happened in town. Break-ins, thefts, even that fire at the old warehouse last year." Lily leaned over the table, her brow furrowed. "So they'd been doing this for a long time." Catherine nodded grimly. "It looks like a network. And your dad, he was just unlucky enough to get caught in their web." "What's Project Willow?" Lily asked, pointing to the phrase again. "I don't know," Catherine admitted, "but it must be important if they're willing to frame someone to protect it." As they continued to decipher the ledger, Catherine's phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up and frowned. "It's Detective Avery," she said, answering the call. "Hello." Lily watched as her mom's face shifted from confusion to alarm. "What? Are you sure?" "No, we haven't seen anything like that." "Yes, of course, we'll be careful." When Catherine hung up, her hands were trembling. "That was Avery," she said. "They found Grove's car abandoned near the train yard. There was blood on the driver's seat." Lily's stomach dropped. Is he dead?" "They don't know yet," Catherine said, "but they think someone might be trying to clean up loose ends." A dangerous visit. Later that afternoon, as the rain let up and the sun peeked through the clouds, a knock sounded at the front door. Catherine hesitated before opening it, her nerves still on edge. Standing on the porch was a man in a crisp gray suit with a briefcase in hand. He looked out of place in their modest neighborhood, his polished demeanor clashing with the worn surroundings. "Mrs. Harper?" he asked, flashing a practiced smile. "Yes," Catherine replied wearily. "My name is Gerald Whittaker. I'm an attorney representing certain parties involved in your husband's case." "What do you want?" Catherine asked, her voice sharp. Whittaker's smile didn't waver. "I'm here to offer a resolution. My clients are willing to reconsider their position in exchange for your cooperation." "Cooperation?" Catherine echoed. "What does that mean?" Whittaker's gaze flicked past her, landing briefly on Lily, who was peeking around the corner. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," he said. "Anything you have to say, you can say here," Catherine said, stepping protectively in front of Lily. Whittaker sighed, opening his briefcase and pulling out a document. "This is a confidentiality agreement. If you agree not to pursue any further investigation into the circumstances surrounding your husband's case, we can guarantee a more favorable outcome for him." "You're asking me to stay silent," Catherine said, her voice cold. "I'm asking you to prioritize your family's well-being," Whittaker corrected. "There's no need for this to get messier than it already has." Catherine's jaw tightened. "Get off my property." Whittaker's smile faltered, and he tucked the document back into his briefcase. "I'll give you some time to think it over," he said. "But be careful, Mrs. Harper. Sometimes digging too deep can be dangerous." As he walked away, Catherine slammed the door and locked it. Lily watched her, fear etched on her face. "Mom, what does he mean?" "It means," Catherine said, turning to her daughter, "we're on the right track." A call for help. That evening, Catherine called Detective Avery and told him about Whittaker's visit. "They're trying to intimidate us," she said. "I'm not backing down." "Be careful, Catherine," Avery warned. "If they're desperate enough to send someone like Whittaker, they might try something more direct." Lily sat quietly, clutching her teddy bear as she listened to the conversation. She felt a mix of fear and determination. Her dad's life was at stake, and now her family was being targeted. When her mom hung up, Lily spoke up. "What do we do now?" "We keep going," Catherine said. "We take this ledger to Avery and let him handle it." "But what if it's not enough?" Lily asked. "What if they cover it up?" Catherine knelt down, looking her daughter in the eyes. "We'll fight, Lily. We'll fight for the truth, no matter what it takes." Lily nodded, her resolve hardening. The fight was far from over, but she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't stop until their dad was free and the real culprits were exposed. The storm breaks. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky mirroring the weight in Lily's heart. The notebook, a silent witness to the lies and schemes threatening to destroy her family, sat on the kitchen table as Catherine paced the room. She was waiting for Detective Avery to arrive. They had decided it was too dangerous to keep the ledger at home any longer. Lily sat quietly, her hands clutching her teddy bear. The encounter with the slick lawyer, Gerald Whittaker, was burned into her memory. She could still hear his smooth, menacing voice and see the faint glint of condescension in his eyes. What frightened her most wasn't his words, but what he represented, a force willing to manipulate, threaten, and perhaps even kill to protect its secrets. Catherine finally sat down, resting her hands on the table. "Lily, are you sure you didn't recognize the man who gave you this ledger?" Lily shook her head. "He didn't tell me his name, but he said he owed Dad for helping him once." Catherine nodded slowly, her brow furrowed. "Whoever he is, he's taking a big risk by giving this to us. We need to take this just as seriously." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Catherine peered through the peephole, then exhaled in relief as she saw Detective Avery standing on the porch. She opened the door, motioning for him to come in. Avery, dressed in his usual rumpled suit, carried an air of exhaustion. "Morning, Catherine." Lyly, he greeted them with a tired smile. "You said you had something I needed to see." Catherine handed him the ledger, her expression grim. "This was given to Lily last night by a man at the train yard. He said it proves Sam was framed." Avery's face hardened as he flipped through the pages. He muttered to himself, then paused, his finger tracing one of the entries. This is significant. If this is accurate, it connects Groves and others to a string of crimes across the county. And this, what's this Project Willow? "We don't know," Catherine said. "But it's mentioned alongside payments tied to my husband's name. Whoever these people are, they set him up." Avery nodded, already pulling out his phone. "I'll need to take this to my team. If this checks out, it could blow the case wide open. A harrowing discovery." As Avery prepared to leave, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. "It's the station." 1 second. He stepped outside to take the call. Lyly and Catherine exchanged nervous glances, both sensing that something was wrong. A few minutes later, Avery returned, his expression grim. "That was my team," he said, his voice heavy. "We found Mr. Groves." Catherine's eyes widened. "Is he?" "He's alive," Avery said quickly, "but just barely. He was found in an abandoned warehouse outside town. He's in the hospital now, but he's unconscious." "Do you think he'll wake up?" Lily asked softly. "We don't know," Avery admitted, "but there's more. The warehouse where we found him, it was full of documents, files, and equipment. It looks like it was being used to monitor people. Your family, among others." Catherine paled. "They were watching us." Avery nodded. "It seems so. We're still going through the evidence, but it's clear they were keeping tabs on anyone who might interfere with their plans." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think they knew about the ledger?" "Possibly," Avery said. "Which means you're not safe here. I'll arrange for officers to stay nearby, but you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while." Catherine hesitated, glancing at Lyly. "We can't just leave Sam here alone." "I know," Avery said, "but if these people feel cornered, they might come after you. We can't take that risk." Unraveling Project Willow. That night, Catherine and Lily packed a few essentials, preparing to stay at a safe house arranged by the police. As they loaded their bags into the car, Lily noticed a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the street. She tugged on her mom's sleeve. "Mom, look." Catherine turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. But when she looked, the figure was gone. "Get in the car," Catherine said firmly. ushering Lily inside. She glanced around nervously before climbing into the driver's seat and locking the doors. As they drove to the safe house, Lily's thoughts kept returning to the ledger and the cryptic term Project Willow. What could it mean? She felt a gnawing sense of urgency to uncover the truth, even as the danger around them escalated. The safe house was a small, nondescript house on the outskirts of town. 2 officers stood guard outside, and Avery had assured them it was one of the most secure locations available. But even inside, Catherine and Lily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. A secret within the ledger. Unable to sleep, Lily sat on the living room floor, flipping through the ledger once more. She traced her finger over the entries, searching for anything she might have missed. Then she noticed something odd. A series of symbols and numbers written in the margins of several pages. "Mom," she whispered, waking Catherine. "Look at this." Catherine squinted at the symbols. "It looks like coordinates." Lily's eyes widened. "Coordinates to what?" "I don't know," Catherine said. "But if this ledger is connected to the people framing your dad, these coordinates could lead to something important." They quickly wrote down the coordinates and decided to share them with Avery in the morning. But Lily's curiosity burned brighter than her caution. She couldn't stop wondering what the coordinates might reveal. A frantic warning. Before dawn, a loud knock jolted them awake. Catherine jumped out of bed, grabbing her phone as she hurried to the door. When she opened it, Avery stood there, his face pale and drenched with sweat. "We need to move," he said urgently. "Now." "What's going on?" Catherine asked, her voice shaking. "They know where you are," Avery said. "The safe house isn't safe anymore. We intercepted a message. They're coming for you." Catherine's blood ran cold. "How much time do we have?" "Minutes," Avery said. "Grab what you can and follow me." As they scrambled to gather their belongings, Lily clutched the ledger tightly. Whatever was happening, she knew it was tied to the truth they were uncovering. And as they fled into the early morning darkness, she vowed to see it through, no matter the cost. The truth unearthed. The morning sky was still dark as Catherine, Lily, and Detective Avery sped away from the compromised safe house. The city lights disappeared behind them, and the landscape turned into an endless stretch of shadowy roads and dense woods. Avery's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set with determination. "Where are we going?" Catherine asked, her voice strained with anxiety. "There's a secondary safe house about an hour outside of town," Avery replied. "It's more secure. But until we get there, I need you both to stay alert." Lily sat in the back seat, clutching the ledger like it was a lifeline. Her mind raced with questions. Who had leaked their location? How far would these people go to protect their secrets? And what were the coordinates hidden in the margins of the ledger? As they drove, Lily's curiosity got the better of her. "Detective Avery," she said hesitantly, "do you know how to check coordinates?" Avery glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his expression softening. "I do." "Why?" "There are coordinates written in the ledger," Lily explained, holding it up. "Mom and I found them last night." Avery frowned, his curiosity piqued. "Let me see." Lily handed him a piece of paper where she and Catherine had copied the numbers. Avery quickly input them into his phone's GPS. The screen loaded for a moment before revealing a map with a red pin dropped in an unfamiliar location. "It's a remote area in the woods," Avery said, his brow furrowing. "About 15 miles from here." "What's there?" Catherine asked, her voice tinged with dread. "I don't know," Avery admitted. "But if it's in the ledger, it must be important. A dangerous detour." Avery hesitated for only a moment before making a sharp turn off the highway. "We're going to check it out," he said. "If this leads to something, it could blow the case wide open." Catherine looked uneasy. "What if it's a trap?" "It might be," Avery admitted, "but we can't ignore it. If these people are willing to kill to protect their secrets, whatever's out there could be the key to stopping them." The car bounced along a dirt road, the forest growing denser with each passing mile. Lily stared out the window, her heart pounding. The woods seemed to close in around them, the towering trees casting eerie shadows in the early morning light. Finally, the GPS announced that they had arrived. Avery parked the car and turned to Catherine and Lily. "Stay close to me," he said, "and don't make a sound." The three of them stepped out into the cold, damp air. Avery carried a flashlight and his service weapon, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The coordinates led them to a small clearing surrounded by trees. In the center stood a weathered, abandoned cabin. "What is this place?" Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible. Avery didn't answer. He moved cautiously toward the cabin, motioning for them to stay behind. Lily clung to her mom, her heart racing as Avery disappeared inside. Moments later, his voice called out, "Come in. You need to see this. The cabin's secret." The interior of the cabin was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew. Avery stood in the center of the room, pointing his flashlight at a trapdoor partially hidden beneath a rotting rug. "It's locked," he said, kneeling to inspect it. "But it looks old. I might be able to break it open." Using the butt of his flashlight, Avery struck the rusted padlock until it snapped. He pulled the trapdoor open, revealing a set of narrow, rickety stairs leading down into darkness. "I'll go first," Avery said, descending cautiously. "Stay close behind me." Catherine hesitated, then followed, with Lily gripping her hand tightly. The stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder as they descended. At the bottom, they found themselves in a small, dimly lit basement. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and a large table in the center was covered with maps, documents, and photographs. Avery picked up one of the photographs and froze. This is surveillance," he said. "Of your house." Catherine gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Lily peered over Avery's shoulder, her eyes widening as she recognized their backyard in the photograph. "These people have been watching you for months," Avery said, his voice grim. "They'd been planning this for a long time." He began rifling through the files, his expression growing darker with each discovery. "They got everything here. Financial records, fake evidence, even the timeline they used to frame your husband. This is a command center." "But why us?" Catherine asked, her voice breaking. "Why Sam?" Avery pulled out a folder labeled Project Willow. Harper, S. He opened it, scanning the pages quickly. "It looks like Sam stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to. He reported an irregularity at work, a financial discrepancy, but it turns out that money was tied to this group. They decided to frame him to keep him quiet." Catherine sank into a chair, her hands trembling. He was just trying to do the right thing. Lily stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the silence. "Can this prove he's innocent?" Avery nodded. "This is more than enough to prove he was framed. But we need to get this to the authorities before they realize we found it." An ambush. As they hurriedly gathered the evidence, the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside made them freeze. Avery moved to the window, peeking out cautiously. His expression turned grim. "They're here," he whispered. "Stay down." Catherine pulled Lily into a corner, shielding her as Avery drew his weapon. Through the cracks in the wooden walls, they could see shadowy figures approaching the cabin, their movements quick and deliberate. A voice called out from outside. "We know you're in there. Come out, and no one gets hurt." Avery shook his head. "They're lying. Stay quiet." The figures surrounded the cabin, their footsteps echoing ominously. Avery motioned for Catherine and Lily to move toward the trapdoor. "Get back down there and hide. I'll hold them off." "No," Catherine protested. "You'll be outnumbered." "Just go," Avery insisted. Reluctantly, Catherine and Lily retreated to the basement, crouching behind the filing cabinets. Lily clung to her mom, her heart pounding as she heard shouting and the sound of a door being kicked open. Gunshots rang out, and Catherine covered Lily's ears, whispering soothing words to keep her calm. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the chaos above growing louder and more violent. Finally, the noise stopped. Footsteps thudded overhead, then receded into the distance. Catherine and Lily held their breath, waiting until the silence became unbearable. Freedom in sight. When they finally emerged, the cabin was empty. Avery sat slumped against the wall, injured but alive. "They took most of the evidence," he said weakly. "But I managed to hold on to the key files." Catherine rushed to his side, helping him up. "We need to get out of here." Avery nodded, wincing in pain. "Let's go. They'll be back." With the remaining evidence in hand, they fled the cabin and returned to the car. As they sped away, Lily looked back at the cabin, its shadowy outline disappearing into the forest. She felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. They had the proof to clear her father's name, but they had also made powerful enemies. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, Lily felt hope flickering in the distance. The truth was finally within reach. The final stand. The car hurtled down the winding dirt road, the forest closing in around them like a shadowy cocoon. Detective Avery's breathing was shallow, his hand pressed against his side to staunch the bleeding from a gunshot wound. Catherine's knuckles were white as she gripped the steering wheel, her eyes darting nervously between the road and the rearview mirror. Lily sat silently in the back seat, clutching the salvaged files from the cabin. "We have to get you to a hospital," Catherine said, her voice tight with urgency. "No hospitals," Avery said through gritted teeth. "They'll be watching. Take me to the precinct. We need to get this evidence into the right hands before they make their next move." "But you're hurt," Catherine protested. "I'll manage," Avery replied, his voice firm despite the pain. "This is bigger than me. A desperate pursuit." As they reached the main highway, headlights appeared in the distance, rapidly closing in. Catherine's stomach twisted with fear as the cars sped closer, their intentions clear. "They've found us," she said, her voice trembling. "Keep driving," Avery said, pulling his weapon and checking the clip. "Stay calm and don't stop for anything." The pursuing vehicles roared closer, and soon they were alongside the Harper's car. A man in one of the cars leaned out of the passenger window, a gun glinting in his hand. Catherine swerved as a gunshot shattered the back window, glass raining down on Lily, who screamed in terror. "Stay down," Catherine yelled, her voice breaking. Avery leaned out of his window, firing at the pursuers. One of the cars veered off the road, crashing into a ditch, but the others pressed on. The chase continued at a harrowing pace, the highway stretching endlessly before them. A last-minute escape. As the road curved ahead, Catherine spotted a construction site with towering cranes and stacks of metal beams. An idea struck her, desperate, but it was their only chance. "Hold on," she shouted, veering sharply onto the dirt path leading into the site. The car bounced violently over uneven terrain as their pursuers followed. Catherine maneuvered through the maze of equipment, her mind racing. She spotted a massive pile of gravel near a half-finished overpass and slammed the brakes. "Get out. Now." Lily and Avery scrambled from the car as Catherine threw it into gear and sent it hurtling toward the gravel pile. The vehicle hit it and flipped onto its side, blocking the narrow path. The pursuing cars skidded to a halt, their occupants forced to climb out and chase on foot. Catherine grabbed Lily's hand, pulling her toward the shadows. Avery limped behind them, his weapon ready. They ducked under scaffolding and behind crates, holding their breath as the men searched for them, their voices echoing through the site. Reinforcements arrive. The sound of sirens in the distance sent a wave of relief through Catherine and Lily. Avery had managed to send an emergency signal from his phone before they abandoned the car, and now backup was finally arriving. "Stay hidden," Avery whispered, positioning himself behind a stack of beams. Moments later, police vehicles flooded the site, their lights flashing. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, and the pursuers scattered, disappearing into the shadows. Avery waved to the officers, who quickly secured the area. "Get them out of here," he said, gesturing to Catherine and Lily. "Take them to the station." "What about you?" Catherine asked. "I'll be right behind you," Avery promised. "Go." The truth comes out. Hours later, they sat in a secure conference room at the police station. Avery, patched up and bandaged, placed the salvaged files from the cabin on the table in front of the district attorney and the chief of police. "This is everything," Avery said. "Proof that Sam Harper was framed. Evidence of a criminal network operating under the guise of Project Willow and connections to several high-profile crimes." The DA flipped through the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is damning. We'll issue warrants immediately." "What about my husband?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling. "Will he be released?" The chief of police nodded. "We'll file a motion to dismiss the charges. With this evidence, we can clear his name." Lily's heart soared. "Dad's coming home?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. "Yes," the chief said, offering a kind smile. "Your dad's coming home." A family reunited. 2 days later, Sam Harper walked out of the county jail a free man. His face lit up as he saw Catherine and Lily waiting for him. Lily ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, tears streaming down her face. "I knew you didn't do it," she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I missed you so much, Pumpkin," Sam said, holding her tightly. "Thank you for believing in me." As the family embraced, Detective Avery stood nearby, watching with a faint smile. The battle had been hard-fought, but justice had finally prevailed. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the evidence uncovered at the cabin led to the arrest of several individuals tied to Project Willow. The group's operations were dismantled, and the community that had once turned its back on the Harpers began to rally around them, offering apologies and support. But for Lily, the real victory wasn't in the arrests or the apologies. It was in the moments she spent with her dad, playing board games, baking cookies, and laughing together like they used to. The shadow that had loomed over their family had finally lifted, and they were stronger for having faced it together. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sam turned to Lily. "You're the bravest person I know," he said. "You saved me." Lily smiled, clutching her teddy bear. "Sometimes," she said, "you just have to be brave, even when it's scary." And with that, the Harpers began to rebuild their lives, knowing that their bond was unbreakable and their love unstoppable.